Okay, so you and the girl are back in your bedroom and you guys are hooking up and suddenly the girl starts freaking out. And for whatever reason, she's tensing up and she's falling inside her head, and no matter what you're doing and no matter how patient you've been and no matter how many times you backed off and so on and then reinitiated whenever she was ready, in between letting her become more comfortable with, turning her on more with more foreplay and just vibing more with her, she still is hesitating. She's still freaking out. This is the moment where you really want to take a step back and start to understand exactly what's bothering her. And once you do that, you're going to have a better idea of how to make her feel comfortable and what the solution you could give her is, so that this way she thinks, okay, let's do this. So she's probably been making comments the whole time, saying things like, I'm not that kind of girl, or I don't sleep with guys the first time I meet them or on the first date. That's just my rule. So in this moment, you really need to understand where she's coming from, why she feels the way she does, what's causing her to feel this way, and pretty much how she even came to think that way. So if she's saying something like, I'm not that kind of girl, you need to understand, what kind of girl is she even talking about? Yeah, we understand she's implying like a slutty girl, but she's already doing things with you. Why is that slutty, sex slutty, but her taking her clothes off is not slutty? Like why is that the line? Now, you also might want to know, why is her hooking up with you equating to her being that kind of girl, even though you guys like each other? So these are questions you really want to know the answer to, because once you do, you could offer a solution, explain to her, look, I get it, you're trying to avoid that, but that's not relevant here. That has nothing to do with this. So you are going to need to do the same thing for every single concern she has. So if she's concerned about something else, you have to understand what concerns her about it, and then you got to find a way to make her feel comfortable. So look, don't be afraid of these objections. These objections are actually what are going to allow you to make her feel comfortable doing something she doesn't do with almost anyone, and that's going to allow you to really take a special place in her life. And it'll also allow you to build this authority figure as the one person in her life who gets her concerns and knows how to help her work through them, and that there's this massive trust built there, as you're going to see when I explain in the sections about how to keep girls around. So here's a list of the objections that a girl might give you and how you might want to go about handling them. So the first one is, if she says, look, I'm not that kind of girl. What she's basically saying is, if I have sex with you too early, that makes me low value, and I'm a cheap slut with no self-respect. And you need to understand, as I mentioned, start digging. Why do you feel that way? Why would you even think that has anything to do with us? Once you find out what she's talking about, you're going to find that your answer is probably going to sound something like, look, I don't see it that way at all. Like, I see the fact that you and I are about to hook up as just, we like each other, and that's not a cheap thing. That actually is a pretty cool thing that we're doing it on the first time, as opposed to most people, it takes them like 10 times to hang out or whatever. Also, if she's naked in your bed and you guys have already done a number of things, you really want to point out what already happened. So you might say, look, you're naked in my bed and I fingered you and you've given me a blowjob. Like, at what point do you become that kind of girl that you think is slutty? Like, we've done all that stuff and you're not that kind of girl. So clearly that's not relevant to us. You're not that kind of girl. We just like each other. And when you say things like that, she's going to think, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. And she's going to say, okay, cool. And then you can start moving forward toward the close. So she also might say something like, I don't have sex on the first date, or I don't have sex the first time I meet someone. What she's saying in that moment is that she's quantifying the amount of times, she's quantifying the connection. She's basically saying there's a certain, a connection has to do with a certain amount of times that you've seen each other, or the amount of time you hung out together. And you need to explain to her that's not true. A connection has to do with what you've done with the time, not the amount of times that you've spent with her. It's a quality thing, not a quantity thing. So you need to say, look, that doesn't apply to us at all. I get it, you don't have sex on the first date, but it makes way more sense to just go off the chemistry that we have and think, okay, if we're doing this on the first date, that actually means we really have a great connection, and it's not a cheap thing. And you should also realize, I'm not the guy that's going to be trying to quantify the amount of times I've gone out with you to realize, okay, do we really like each other? I'm going to say, well, every time I hang out with this girl, or so far it's been awesome, let's see what else is awesome. Let's just keep going with it. Let's go with the flow here. She also might say, look, we're not having sex tonight, and you've probably heard this a million times if you've gone out. So what she's saying is pretty much the same thing as I'm not that kind of girl. She's saying, look, this is going too fast for me. I don't like that if we hook up, it means that pretty much like I become someone I don't want to be. You have to say, look, we're not going to do anything you're not ready for, obviously, but you should know it's really lame to just give me a hard and fast rule because of past experiences or things you've heard from other people about about how a connection should be. Like, I'm not doing that to you. You're basically saying if we don't, that our connection sucks and it's not good enough to have sex, which to me is total bullshit. And if that's how you feel, why are you here? If you think us having sex tonight ruins things, why are you here? She might say, look, I want to wait because I really like you. And that is a very interesting one. What she's saying here is that, look, I only have sex with people who I don't really like, and I make other people I do like wait. And she's also saying that if she has sex with you, it's going to ruin everything. And funny enough, I've heard this a few times, and it's a rare one, and it's so backward, but it's there. And you're going to want to explain to her, look, that makes absolutely no sense at all. In fact, the only reason why I want to have sex with you is because I like you. If I didn't like you, I wouldn't want to have sex with you. This sex wouldn't be on the table at all. So she needs to understand, look, the chemistry's good. That's why it's on. And if she needs you to treat her like shit for sex to happen, you're not going to have a great relationship because it's going to be you treating her like shit to get sex, and you're not going to care, and you're just going to find another girl. She needs to understand it doesn't make sense. She might say, how do I know you don't have STDs? And that moment, it's just a safety concern, right? So you're going to say, look, I don't have any. And to be honest, I don't even know if you have any either. But we're just going to wear a condom so that we both know that no matter what, we're safe, we're both protected, and let's just enjoy this together, okay? She also might say, oh, is this what you do with every girl? Almost in a snobby way. And what she's basically saying is what you're doing is fucked up and you have no right to be doing it. And even though you trying to hook up with her is a massive compliment, she's not taking it that way, or at least she's challenging it. So in this moment, you want to say well, is this what you do to every guy? You bring him back you go back to his place, you start hooking up, and then all of a sudden, sex is, you basically reject him and say, look, what we have is not good enough for sex. That's kind of offensive. Is that what you do to every guy? Now, what you're doing here is you're throwing the objection back at her and saying, you're actually the one who's being really fucked up right now. If you didn't like me, we shouldn't have done anything we've done until now. She also might say, what kind of girls do you usually meet that they have sex with you on the first time? Another snobby comment. In this moment, what she's basically saying is, look, every girl that you've had sex with quickly is a cheap, slutty girl that has no value, and that's offensive to both of you guys. But your response when she says, what kind of girls sleep with you on the first date? You're going to say, really cool ones. Duh. You also might say, what kind of guys do you go out with that it takes you forever to figure out if you like them enough to sleep with them? Or you might say, what kind of guys do you go out with that when you go back to their place, you start hooking up with them, they let you see them naked and they let you touch all their body parts and they do the same to you, and then you basically say, I don't like you. That's kind of fucked up. So the entire question is fucked up, and you might hear that one actually pretty frequently if you pull girls quickly. Now, realize that what she basically did was she said, you're cheap, and all the girls you slept with are cheap, and none of you guys have standards, and none of you know how to behave properly, and that's a massive insult. So if you've heard that before and you didn't realize that what she was saying was kind of insulting, realize that now. It's a massive insult. She also might say, I don't want to have sex tonight because I do want to make sure I see you again. And what she's basically saying is, look, I want to hook up with you, but I need a little bit of reassurance that this isn't gonna cost me you. I'm not gonna think, you're not gonna think tomorrow oh man, that girl's easy, or that girl's a slut. She wants to make sure she sees you again. And you have to explain to her that, look, you're way more likely to see me if we have sex tonight, especially if it's good sex. I'm just going to think, okay, this girl obviously really liked me because we hooked up. You know, if you don't do that, I'm just going to think you're a child who has no idea what you want. You have no idea how to decide whether or not you like someone, and you just play games. Like, I'm not going to be turned on by that, just so you know. It's going to make me want you less if we don't have sex, right? She might say, how do I know that you're telling the truth? And sometimes you'll hear this if you've answered one of her objections and she still needs a little bit of reassurance that she's not going to get fucked over by doing this. And that's right now you want to say, look, there's no point in us having anything or even spending any of this time together if you don't trust me, especially if you want to see me again. You got to trust me the same way I'm trusting you. And yeah, if I did something fucked up and I screwed up, fine, you know, don't trust me, but you haven't done anything and I've been trusting you this whole time. I kind of expect the same courtesy here. She might say, look, we're never going to see each other again because we don't live anywhere near each other, so why should we do this? You're going to hear this stuff sometimes when you're traveling, and so what you need to explain to her is say, look, I'm way more likely to stay in touch with you and see you again and make plans to visit or get you to my city if we have sex. Like, to be honest, if we don't, to me, this is just going to be very similar to thinking, okay, well, she was just another girl that I met this one time that nothing really happened with. We clearly didn't click that well. Otherwise, we would have hooked up. It just didn't happen. So she also might say, I like you, but I just want to wait, and not give you a whole lot of reasons here. She might just say, look, I just want to wait, and shut down, any real reason. And you need to explain to her, look, that makes no sense. You're saying you like me and you want to wait because you like me, but to me that's so backward, because the only reason why I want to have sex with you is because I like you. So what are you talking about here? The point here really is to emphasize that there really is no sense in waiting, and any concern she has really doesn't make a whole lot of sense if she wants to have something with you. So there's no downside, and there's only upside, which is great sex, a fun time with a cool guy that she, likes, and she might get to keep if she plays her cards right. And she needs to understand that there really is no room for any insecurities or anxieties or judgment if she wants to have a cool experience with you. So these are the most common objections that I've heard in the past and how I've handled them. And you need to really understand what's happening here, where everything is a reason to have sex. The fact that you're there and everything you've done up until now is just another reason to take the next step. So in the future, if you get objections that are not listed here, that's fine. But understand what I've explained here, which is everything is a reason to do it. There's always a reason to take the next step. And the reasons you're giving that we shouldn't have sex are not really good reasons. So if you gave me a good reason, I would think, okay, damn, that's a really good reason. But you didn't give me a good reason, so I'm kind of thinking my way makes a little bit more sense. And when you take that approach with whatever objection she gives you, that's when she's going to think, okay, this guy seems to have a pretty good head on his shoulders. Let's try it his way. Especially since if you were to point out to her that, look, we're only here because I approached you. We're only here because I kept the conversation going even when things were getting awkward, and I led you to my room through a date, through whatever. We're only here because I've been doing things and we're both enjoying this. So it makes a lot of sense to just keep trying things my way. Like, I have a pretty good feeling about this. Trust me. In the worst case scenario, we don't like each other tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Like, this is not a life or death situation. This is just let's just try this out. Let's see how the next step goes together. Let's see if we like each other. Let's see if anything comes from this.